Nixon here, and we're going to talk about what's happening in Europe. Europe is in deep and serious trouble. I think a lot of people who are looking at the situation, they really don't realize how bad the situation is in Europe and necessarily what caused it. But let's talk about that. Let's talk. Hello, all Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk about the EU a little bit. Talk a little bit about Europe and what's going on there. There are a couple of ways, perspectives through which we can view. Let me put on my other glasses. I got to actually have these computer glasses that actually they are made apparently, or they're ranged so that things like just a few feet from your face is clearer. So it seems to look a little better. Oh my God, that's me. Doesn't look so good after all. Maybe I'll go back to the foggy glasses. At any rate, let's go. So the discussion there's a lot of ways to look at Europe, but from my perspective, I think that Europe is um, I'll put it like this, going to kind of get its comeuppance. That's one way to put it. That, there's a bill due and that bill has to be paid. And I think that, I listened to old Shahid Bolson, who said some things that I agree with very strongly. Brilliant guy. And he says things I disagree with. And that's a little bit everybody, right? But one of the issues that he's been talking about is, look, the devil's due. There's a bill due and you got to pay it. And if you look at Europe right now, here's the reality of Europe. For centuries, the royal families of Europe, be they're royal through bloodline or the royal families just simply through economics, have been pillaging and plundering the world. They've been taking over countries and stealing their stuff all over the place. And, the people of Europe have benefited from that. They've lived a lifestyle. Now, what happened is, that was better than most of the world. But what we were told oftentimes is same thing in the United States, same thing here, same thing. What we were told was this is because the US and Europe's cultures are somehow superior to these other cultures, right? When in reality, when you looked at it, it was something much more malevolent, right? It was simple. If I got a gun and you got a spear and a bow and arrow, I can shoot you before you can get to me with a bow and arrow. Therefore, I have a military advantage. I have a monopoly on violence, and I will use that because you have things that I want. And I can force my will upon you because I have a certain amount of ability to utilize violence, and you can't stop me. And that was the European advantage. That was the European advantage. And they took advantage of that and stole stuff for centuries. And of course, the ruling elite just, packed their stuff up. Well, I think one of the things that has happened in Europe and the United States, both, and the people really don't get it. Some of us do, but some of us don't. One of the things that the people really don't quite understand, I think, they see things are going bad. They see things that their lives are materially getting, deteriorating, and they're trying to figure out why, and they want to blame it on somebody. It's the left's fault. It's Trump's fault. It's this person's, it's that person's fault. When the reality is that the world has changed, and the European and the American ruling elite created these big companies like, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. You could go on and on, these companies that they use to maraud around the world and enrich these companies, right? And these countries went around to these other countries, killed people, overthrew these, they were monsters. They were sociopathic companies. And they utilized the United States government to do their dirty work, to enrich themselves. And of course, the politicians would enrich themselves as a result because they were the middle people making all this happen. And now it's getting much more difficult for these countries to go around the world and rob and steal and to victimize people in other countries. So now These sociopaths that we created are coming home. In the same way that your body, if you start starving, if your body's not getting a nutrition, what will your body do? It'll start eating itself. That's why you lose weight. Your body will start burning its own fat, and then it'll go to muscle, and it'll go to the next thing, and it'll burn everything there. It will effectively eat itself to survive. And these monsters that we've created, what are they doing? They're now eating us. And I mean, to me, the purest example are student loans. These big banks are making a fortune off student loans. And what are they? What is this? What is it's debt in creating debt for students. And what is debt? A claim on future earnings. A claim on future.
Hi everyone, and welcome back. We are joined today by Larry Johnson.
I don't understand why
analyst.
The YouTube just starts out of the blue sometime for no reason. I guess, I don't know if you leave the app open, who knows? At any rate, so what's happening is this: these sociopathic monsters that we've created are simply saying, well, we've got American people. I can't eat the indigenous people in Australia. Already ate them. Doggone it, I'm having trouble here. The Muslims, they're fighting back. The Australians, they're teaming up with the Chinese and the Russians, and it's getting more difficult. They're pushing the French out, things of that nature. I got to have something to eat. Now, what's happening? The American companies and the American government is eating Europe, and at the same time, they're eating their own. So now what you have is you have these monstrosities that can't eat around the world anymore, and they're eating their own one way or the other. There's no honor amongst thieves. American banks will say, "Look, we'll eat our students. We will stake a claim on the future earnings of the 18 and 19-year-old kids here, put them in debt for the rest of their lives." And of course, whoa, Europe, you have you need to stay warm, and you're buying energy from Russia. We'll stop that. See, what you have to understand is this about the sanctions. This is something important to understand about the United States pushing Europe and the ruling elite pushing Europe to sanction Russia. Sanction Russia. We're not going to buy anything from Russia. Okay, you can think of that from the perspective of Russia. Hey, we're not buying things from Russia. We'll fix them. But there's something more important, and that is this: if you're not buying it from Russia, but you need it, that means you have to buy it from somewhere else, doesn't it? So the United States says, don't buy energy from Russia. Why? Because we sell energy. Now, we're going to sell it at a much higher price, but it's evil if Russia is so. So what the US does is this: they convince the Europeans through, all kinds of bribes and through election manipulation and through putting in U.S. puppets and members of the ruling elite and these neoliberal puppets that, where'd Merritt's work, BlackRock, where'd Macron work, Wall Street banks, Goldman Sachs and Rothschild banks, they put their people in charge. And then they say, okay, so now that we have our people in charge, we can say, you guys, poor suckers, are the one that's going to pay for it. We're working in cahoots with the U.S. We're not buying energy from Russia. You got to buy it from the U.S. at 5 to 7 times the cost. Oh, wait a minute. You're making this or that in your industry. Let's close down the industry. You know, the United States is trying to rebuild some industry. They're going to steal your industry as best they can. It's going to be difficult to do, but they're trying to say we'll steal the energy. The markets. What does the U.S. say? After screwing them up, blowing up Nord Stream, screwing Europe over, blowing up Nord Stream and everything else, and then what do they say? We're going to put tariffs on you. And you should be lucky it's only 15 or 20%, right? Just taking Europe to the cleaners. And because these neoliberal corporations, who are really, to be honest, they're neither European nor American. They don't have a country of origin. That may be where they started, but now they just claim any country where they don't have to pay taxes as their home country, or island, more likely. So what do? They are simply extracting all the wealth. They're extracting the wealth of the Europeans, of the American companies, and originally American companies, but the globalist neoliberal elite, whatever you want to know, whatever name works for you ideologically, I don't care. They're extracting money out of Europe, out of the working class, out of the poor, out of the working poor. They're extracting money out of the national treasuries. They're extracting money out everywhere they can because the house is on fire and they want to steal everything they can before it burns to the ground. They're doing it in Europe and they're doing it here in the US too. as I said, the U.S. has a better chance of survival because the U.S., has a lot of area to grow its own food and has its own energy, and Europe can't do that as well as the United States. It doesn't have much energy of its own, and it can grow its own food, but not great. Now, we got some issues I could get into with what's happening with our farmers right now, but the capacity is there. The ability, the capacity to do it. So the US can come out of things a little bit better than Europe. As far as Europe is concerned, this is truly a momentous time because Europe has, as a continent, been, let's face it, they divvied up. We'll take this part of Africa, you take that part of Africa, you take that part of Africa. French Indochina. What was the whole Vietnamese War about? France was in Vietnam, and it was a very resource-rich country, and France was robbing them blind, and then Ho Chi Minh et al., General Diop, they fought the French and drove them out. Now, as the French were being driven out, as it got more difficult, and they were running out of money, the U.S. started financing France in the war in Vietnam, and then the U.S. just took the war over completely, and then the U.S. lost the war. But the bottom line is the U.S. was trying to keep France in there. Why? Because these imperialist, that word, colonialist, whatever you want to call it, whatever term you want to use, companies work together because they all benefit together. They all work together. They steal together. They share, depending on who, the division of labor. And they've been working together to make sure they all stay rich. In fact, there's a story where Ho Chi Minh, whose name I forgot his name was before it was Ho Chi Minh, and they were starting the United Nations, the League of Nations or whatever, and they came out and they said, look, all countries should be able to decide their own fate. They should all be, able to have sovereignty and all that kind of stuff. And he came to Paris and he wanted to talk to the American president. I don't know whoever it was, Woodrow was, whoever it was. He wanted to talk to him. And he wanted to say, this is great. I'm glad you guys are going in that direction. I'm from Vietnam, and hey, we want to get out from under the French. So, the United Nations is saying what we're trying to hear. I want to talk to the American president about that. And the American president wouldn't meet him. Why? Because they didn't mean you, because they didn't really mean it. When they said, look, we're the United Nations, there should be sovereignty and independence, it was just a lie. It was something that they could talk about. It was effectively like wokeness today. Right? It was effectively wokeness. It was effectively like Hollywood and like the CIA and the Biden and all these people like, yes, we're standing up for the transgendered people and the minorities and all of this. That was nothing but virtue signaling. They didn't really mean it. They're stealing everything they can. They're starting wars. They're lying, cheating, doing everything they can, but they have to do something to create an air of goodness. We're the good guys. Why? Because we're standing up for the transgendered people and the minorities. Look, we've got TV shows and we got one black person, one white person, one gay person, one Indian person, one female, one this, one that. See, see how virtuous we are? We are in the minorities. That's what they do to cover who they really are and what they really are. And that's what the League of Nations saying we're for sovereignty and independence and all. It was a lie. It was virtue signaling to cover up the fact that they were lying, cheating, thieves and pirates. Same as today. So my point being, that is what the European ruling elite has been, the most treacherous, malevolent forces on earth, and they still are. And maybe, I hope they learn it. It looks like it'll be too late. Maybe the people of Europe, the working class of Europe, will wake up and say, look, you know what? We got to admit, these bastards been doing it all over the world, and now it's our turn. That's all it is. They did it to the Africans, they did it to the Vietnamese, and they did it to the New Caledonians, and they did it to everybody in South America, wherever. And now that the outside it ain't working, inside is. And they're pretending, they're talking about Germany and France. I heard something about Germany yes, Germany has had negative growth again for the third consecutive quarter or whatever the hell, right? Second consecutive year, things like that. And that discussion is a fraud. And I'll tell you why that discussion is a fraud. And I've said it like this, I'll put it like this again. If that implies that they're looking at the economic indicators to see whether or not technically Germany's in a recession or a depression or whatever the case may be, right? But that's the wrong word, because a recession or depression or looking at economic indicators implies that something can be done to fix it. It implies that at some point they're going to turn around, right? What you imply is a wave, right? A wave has a crest and a trough. It implies that you're in a trough. The fact that you're in a trough implies that the next wave has a crest, doesn't it? Crest, trough, crest, trough. The crest implies a trough. The trough implies a crest. If I'm at my high, I'm going to be low. But that implies a wave. But this ain't a wave. This ain't a trough, because if there was a trough, there'd be a crest. This is not your economy is having a difficult time and it's not expanding like it used to, or it's not expanding in this quarter. That implies that there's a possibility that next quarter it's going to expand. They're not telling you the truth, right? I like to put it this way. You can't say that the Mojave Desert is in a dry spell. It's having a drought. It is a desert. Deserts are deserts. That ain't a drought. Unless you got a few million years, maybe a few million years from now, it won't be a desert anymore. But that's not within the context of human existence. So my point being that in the same way that the Mojave Desert is not in a drought, it is a desert, and it's going to be dry. It's going to have cactus or whatever the hell, and lots of sand and creatures that can live with no water or something. I don't know. But if you get out in there, you ain't going to make it, because it is not conducive to human survival. Okay. Europe ain't coming back from this in our lifetime, in many lifetimes, I believe, but not in our lifetime or your lifetime. If you're 10 years old, it ain't coming back anytime soon. It is in a terminal decline. That's what Europe's in, terminal decline. And here's the main reason I would say it's in a terminal decline. We'll start with this. Before they could have the economic decline. I couldn't say that the ruling elite of Europe could go into a moral decline, because if you look at the ruling elite of Europe for this whole time, the things that they've been doing, they've been so down at the bottom, so vicious, brutal, murderous, and treacherous, that there's no place for them to go down. The ruling elite of Europe have abused people around the world and abused the people of Europe. And the people of Europe got a little bit out of it. And so they didn't realize how bad these people were. Every now and then they'd wake up and realize. And then every now and then they'd throw the Europeans into some kind of a so-called world war and wipe out 100 million of them or something crazy and continue on. And the Europeans still didn't realize how bad they were getting screwed. But I think they will now. But at any rate, so what we're looking at is a situation wherein the Europeans, because the ability to rob and steal around the world was declining, they still were able to maintain a reasonable standard of living because they could get natural resources very inexpensively from Russia. You've got this gigantic trove of natural resources right next to Europe, and Europe has industry, and Europe can get all of this stuff from them. And something that's critical when it comes to industry, and that is energy. So they could get energy at a reduced price that gave them an advantage over a lot of other areas that had to pay full price for energy. Energy nice and clean, as clean as energy can be. You know what I'm saying? Gas, if you wanted gas, whatever the case may be, they could get their energy. It was readily available. They had a partner in Russia who wanted to do business with them, was happy. Everything was working out well. Then, of course, ideology came into it and economics came into it. And as their economic model became less viable, they decided, hey, Russia's giving us a good deal. Why don't we just go to Russia and steal it all? Because that's the mentality of the ruling elite in Europe. We're getting a good price from Russia, but I think we need to just go kill them and steal it all, because that's the kind of ruling elite that they already have. It wasn't good enough to get it at a reduced price from Russia. Not good enough. We'll take it all at no price. And that was their game. The problem they had is that Russia is far too militarily powerful and economically powerful. So they waited. They tried to take Russia out time and time again. It never worked. And now this was going to be the big hurrah, and it didn't work. And now Russia is powerful enough and has enough economic and military alliances that Russia now has the ability to say, okay, you tried to take us out. We're not going to do business with you. But In order to be industrially viable, you need our energy, and we can find other buyers. We're not selling it to you. So they're making these big deals with the Chinese, which they already had some. They're building more pipelines to China, and it looks like that within the next few years, what Trump is saying to Europe, he's saying to Europe, excuse me, a little still recovering here. I'm a little tired. He's saying to Europe, look, you need to cut yourself off from Russia. Well, I mean, he's saying that, and the Europeans are like, we can't possibly do that, which they can't. I feel that here shortly, it's not going to be optional. That at some point the Russians are going to say, and I don't blame them, look, guys, here's the way things are going to go. Been nice doing business with you. Sorry, not sorry, as they say. And we're not re-signing any new contracts with you. We're selling our stuff elsewhere. Have a nice day. Lucky for you, you're able to buy all your LNG and oil and all of that stuff from the United States. Problem is, as the United States starts to deteriorate, the United States has this stuff, and they'll simply say to Europe, we can't afford to send it to you anymore. We got to have it. We're having problems here, economic problems at home. We're going to have to use this stuff at home. And the Europeans are going to be in a mell of a hess. And I don't see a way out. Like, take France, for instance. It has been estimated that they've stolen $50 trillion from Africa, the Sahel region of Africa. Right? What does France do? They have all these nuclear power plants. And how do they fuel them? They fuel them by stealing the nuclear material from Niger and Burkina Faso, etc. Right? So they get it cheap. They get it for next to nothing. They pay them $2 and they sell it for $212. And they take whatever they need for their own nuclear power plants. Well, now the French are going to have to pay full price. They're going to have to pay market price for their nuclear material for their nuclear power plant, which means they're not going to be able to offer things as cheaply anymore. And the government's going to have to pay for that stuff, which means the price of electricity is going to continue up. Meanwhile, and something that is talked about is the issue of quite frequently from a perspective that I disagree with, but the issue of immigration. Tremendous immigration problem in Europe. Now, you'll notice, why is it that they don't have immigration problem in China? Notice that? Hey, they don't have one in Russia. Have you noticed that? Because they're not going around the world destabilizing their neighbors, destabilizing countries that are close, that are fairly close to them, destabilizing all of these countries. The Europeans have ruling elite have destabilized these countries, have colonized these countries, and the people in the colonized countries that are now subjects of the crown of the given country just say, well, I can travel to Britain now because my country is a British colony, so I can travel back and forth from a colony. Boom, they come to British, they come to Great Britain. They come to French. Oh, Algeria, why there's so many Moroccans and Algerians, right? So they've created an environment where the people from the colonies can come there, number one, but then number two, what else do they do? The ruling elite want cheap labor. So when they opened up Eastern Europe, all of this cheap labor came from Eastern Europe. So they don't have to pay the regular money to their own people. And of course, when they destabilized Libya, that the gateway to Africa, all of these Africans came in. Then when they destabilized Syria, all these Syrians and the Middle Eastern start pouring in a lot of Afghan refugees. So they went, and the ruling elite destabilized these countries and brought in all the refugees. And the people were upset for a number of reasons, some cultural, some economic. Some were like, oh my crap, they're bringing these people in, which means they've got cheap labor. Yeah, that's why they brought it in. And you're going to blame now. The ruling elite will then say to you, you should blame that cheap labor. That's who you should get mad at. You should go fight them and hit them in the head. You should be angry at the immigrants. The truth is, I would say this: it's okay to be angry over immigrants, but the immigration, sure, you got every right to be, but make sure that you understand who did that you don't let the ruling elite, the people who created this problem deliberately, so they would have a class of cheap labor, a class of people that are cheap labor that they can use, right? So they got that. They can pay them less. They can abuse them. They can use them. They can do whatever they want with them. What are they going to do? Go to the police? They can rape them and pillage them. What are they going to do? Go to the police? No, because they'll get thrown out. They wanted a class of compromised people that they can abuse. So you have to blame the ruling elite. That's all they are. They are a class of compromised late people who they can abuse for cheap labor and whatever else they want to abuse them for. And of course, yes, does it hurt the labor pool as a whole if you introduce a large amount of people who will work, who are forced to work at a reduced price? It does affect the pool of labor and lowers the price for everybody, no question about it. But the ruling elite would have you just get mad at the immigrants, go fight the immigrants, go hurt them, go beat them up. Why? Because it intimidates them and horrifies them and frightens them even more, and then they can take advantage of it even more. And what you'd never do is look at the person who destabilized their country, who started a war, who created all of this, and then welcome them in. Hey, we want more immigrants, come on in. You forgot that the governments of Europe were like, yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of Europeans. Oh, we've got to take them because we're the nice people. We've got to take all of these refugees because we're good. No, they took the refugees because they wanted a class of people who would work cheap that they could abuse. The ruling elite have created this. So now what do you have in Europe? You have a large class of immigrants, of people who are very, very poor. Some don't speak the language. You've got people who, rather than being mad at the ruling elite, are actually mad at the immigrants. You've got people now who are trying to figure out why in the world my life is going to hell. My job's closing down. My factories are closing down. Everything's going bad. The government doesn't listen, and you have no say. Keir Starmer, Macron, you've got a bunch of people who have well under 20% approval rating, who are running things, making decisions with complete and absolute disregard for their so-called constituents. So you've got a group of countries now who are run by an elite ruling class who not only do they not listen to the working class, they can't stand them. Not only do that, they hate them. They can't stand them. They're disgusted by him. And they are the ones making the decisions. And the working class has no input. And they're getting angry and furious. And they will get angrier and they will get more furious because things ain't going to improve. The model is not good. What they're trying to do, their best to do right now, which they're struggling to do, what they're struggling and trying to do is drag them into a war with Russia. Like, hey, let's go to war with Russia. We want to steal all the Russian stuff, and we need some cannon fodder. All right, Germany, bring all the people. France, the Netherlands. Let's put all the young people in the cannon fodder suits and send them to the Ukraine border to fight with Russia. We want to weaken Russia in the same way that they're throwing the Ukrainian youth and everything else at Russia to weaken Russia. They don't care how many of them die. That's their job. They'll do the same thing to you and the Netherlands and Belgium and Germany and France and Europe. Same thing for the youth there. And then the older ones, they don't care. Useless leaders to them. So we have a ruling elite that is not only disconnected from the working class, but actually holds the working class in contempt. And it's the same way here. In fact, in America, they're angry at you if you say, look, I don't know about this Israel thing. Unacceptable. They hold you in contempt. How dare you? Don't you understand that your betters have told you that you're supposed to support Zionism? If you don't support Zionism, guess what? They hold you in contempt. You know, one of the things that's going on right now in the United States, we're talking about Europe, but this is all one thing. You see it in Europe. When something, no matter what happens, it's always an excuse to crack down. COVID, that was an excuse to crack down on the people. Now Charlie Kirk, that's an excuse to crack down. They're literally saying, yes, we've got to crack down on the left. This guy's the left. Here's what I would say. Really? How do we know? You've got now, it's like 9/11. 9/11 happens, and they had this thing called the Patriot Act, a 300-page document. Within days after 9/11, here's the Patriot Act. Am I supposed to believe that they wrote this 300-page document within 3 days, came up with all of these laws and things they want to pass that were more restrictive, cracking down on people days after 9/11? Absolutely not. That was sitting there on the shelf waiting. Charlie Kirk has met an untimely demise. I could go on and on about that. He was an asset of the system. He was a highly paid asset of the system. I suspect he was a naive asset of the system, that he thought that he had some say. And apparently, it's possible that maybe Charlie Kirk might have asked the wrong question or become a toxic asset. And you know what Wall Street does with toxic assets? They dump them, right? And that's maybe I'm wrong. That's the way I see the Charlie Kirk thing. Maybe there was just some lone gunman. I don't know, but it seems to me that perhaps he was a toxic asset and they dumped the toxic asset. It's unfortunate. I don't agree with it. I'm not celebrating the death of a 31-year-old man. Absolutely. You'll not never, absolutely not. You'll never see me do that. But I fear that some way or shape or form the system was involved in that. But what did they say then? Wow, we've got to crack down on the left. They're always looking for when Biden was in, you remember what he said? We've got to crack down. We've got domestic terrorists. It was just an excuse for Biden to crack down on the people. Domestic terrorists, that means you. And you know what that domestic terrorist would have meant under Biden? It would have meant someone that oppose Zionism, and then he would say you're providing material help to Hamas, which is a terrorist, and you're a domestic terrorist, so you've got to be stopped. Now they want to come out with something where if you provide material support to terrorism, they can take your passport, right? That the Secretary of State can do that. I wonder what the some material support for terrorism will mean. Same exact thing. If you criticize Israel, they'll say you're supporting Hamas. So Biden said, we got to deal with terrorism. If you criticize Israel, we'll say you're supporting Hamas. And what's Trump say? We got to deal with terrorists and all this other stuff. So what? So if you criticize Israel, you're supporting Hamas. It's the same game. We've got to stop the left. How? If you're criticizing Israel, you're supporting Hamas. That's how we got to start. Hamas. That's how we're supporting the left. And who's the left? Who's the left? How do this some schmuzzle who allegedly killed Charlie Kirk? He's the left. And this is what I would say to anybody. And what makes him left? What makes him what makes him left? What evidence do you have that he's on the left? How do you define left? If you believe the story, which is highly dubious, but if you believe the story that he was some trans activist and he shot Charlie Kirk because of Charlie Kirk said anti-trans things, that don't make him the left. There is a very long history of what the left is, and it ain't trans activism. You see, they have very, very skillfully redefined the left. So now that you can take some person who is, I don't care what the ideology is, if you can say they're a trans activist, you now define them as the left. That's all. Hey, he became left. Wow, because he was a trans activist. He supported trans or LGBTQ. That's the only thing. There's nothing else. How about this? I know plenty of people that are on the left that aren't that thrilled with trans activism and the LGBTQ stuff that are left. Why? Because they fit the traditional definition of the left. They're anti-war. They're anti-corporate. They don't trust the government and the ruling elite. That's used to be, remember, the 60s. Don't trust the man. Don't trust the establishment. That was the left. Now the left, supposed left, is the establishment. As long as they can say they're a trans activist, then that makes them the left. It's absurd. But just like Biden said, we can crack down on our enemies because they're supporting Hamas because they are opposed to Israel. Trump can say we're cracking down on our enemies because they're supporting Hamas because they're criticizing it. It's the same thing. It's always the same thing. You're criticizing Israel. They're looking for a way to define you into being a terrorist and take action against you. And Europe, for God's sake, you can't tweet literally. If you tweet something that someone else finds insulting, you get arrested, you get fined. I mean, Europe, before you even get to the economic problem, spiritually, intellectually, and philosophically, it's rotten. The idea that the ruling elite, think about this, the von der Leyens, the Merzes, the Macrons, what they're saying to us is that there are morals and values that need to be upheld, and that they are the gatekeepers of those morals and values. Oh no, you said something to upset someone. Our morals and values are far higher than that. We cannot allow you to say something that we've got to arrest you. We've got to do this. Oh, you said you're not supporting Zionism. Well, our morals and values say you got to support Zionism, but Zionism's committing a genocide. So there are certainly some inconsistencies and contradictions in your morals and values. We lead with our values, but the one thing your values is not upset about, it does not oppose, is genocide. In fact, your morals and values say we have to support genocide. And if the people of the country say, I don't support genocide, well, guess what? They have to be attacked in some way, shape, or form, economically, whatever the case may be, and pushed back into either made an example out of or simply punished, pushed back into place. Not in this country. We support genocide in this country. We don't want to hear anything of it. So you've got a country, you've got a ruling elite all throughout Europe. They were always, to some extent, not aligned with the people, but now that there's massive economic threats, now that there are threats to their power and what they consider their hegemony, the fangs come out, the claws come out. And now they show that they really do hate, despise the people in their countries, the working class. They hate them. You're supposed to do what you're told to do, and you're not doing it. And they hate them for it. And now the privileges that the working class in Europe have experienced for many, many centuries are going to come to a screeching halt. I think that I've said this for a long time. I believe that we are coming to a time when there will be violence in Europe. I don't know to what level it will, but I believe there will be violence against the ruling elite. There's going to be, and here's two levels. Number one, there's times when people wake up in life, and when their life's been screwed, and they look over things and say, man, I was screwed, and they try to actually figure out why. Not what they're told why, but to try to figure it out on their own, right? And I've said at some point the Ukrainians are going to wake up and say, holy crap, we've been screwed. And it wasn't by the Russians. They're going to actually try to figure it out. There's going to be a discussion in and around Ukraine. And it will be, we got screwed, and it wasn't by the Russians. We've been used. And now everything's crashing around our feet. And they're going to be mad at the Europeans. And I believe the time is coming when the European populace, not lists, populace, electorate, is going to look around and say, holy crap, our leaders screwed us far worse than we could ever imagine. The economic deterioration will be like nothing they've ever seen in their lives. And they're going to expect to come out of it. And it's just going to be getting worse. You can't come out of it because the economic model doesn't work. It doesn't work. Look right now, go to a car lot in the United States and look at try to buy yourself a 4Runner, a Toyota 4Runner. Oh, a nice little truck, 50, 60 grand. But a pickup truck in the US, pickup trucks are big. People love pickup trucks. I drive a pickup truck. The manly thing to do is to have a pickup truck. Manly in the United States, right? Brand new pickup truck. You're lucky if you can find one in the 60s. A nice pickup truck's going to be 70, 80,000. Who the hell can buy that these days? Who can afford it? People only everything. So people can't afford the rent. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to buy a car. In Europe, is going to be far worse than here. This is going to be bad. This is already, but my point is this. What I'm saying is this. It's an economic model that doesn't work. That's what it is. It is an economic model that simply says everything must be done for profit. Number one, but there's an even worse part of it. And this is what has really screwed the people of Europe. One of the things that have really screwed the people of Europe, and that is that one of the foundations of neoliberalism is deregulation. And what these people, through skillful and artful propaganda, was able to convince the people of Europe and the United States that the problem with corporations was too many regulations, that we need to release the reins of regulations off of the corporations. And if we just do that, everything will be better. And there was a twin lie with it. And that was, we need to reduce taxes on the wealthy and on the corporations so they'll have more money. It implied that corporations and rich people were inherently moral and inherently wise, and that if given the opportunity, they would invest, and that their investment would help everybody, and the whole thing was a lie. You gave them more money. What do they do? What happens when the government gives a company more money? They buy back their own stock so they can make more money. The greatest profit they can make is not from building a new company, a factory. Why? Because people can't afford the stuff they're building in the old factory. So why build a new factory? You're overcharging stuff. People ain't buying your stuff. How can you make money? The government just gave you another 100 million, 500 million, $10 billion in tax relief, as they say, relief. And what do you do with that? You buy back your own stock so that the price of your stock will go up, and so that the dividends will go up. And for the rich people that own the company and the board of directors and all of that, whose salaries are tied to stock, so they'll get richer. So what do? You utilize, the government gives you $10 billion. You utilize that $10 billion to enrich the stockholders, the board of directors, the president, the small group of people. And what do you do with the workers? You lay more people off and close more factories. Why? Because you make more money doing that. So my point is, what you have is an economic model that works for a small group of people, and that's what it's intended to do, and it does it well, and the rest of the people have to pay the price. And now we have the classic crisis of overproduction. We have the classic crisis wherein people work in a factory, whoever, let's say you have a factory job, and they can't afford to buy the things that they make in their own factory. People work at a store and they can't afford to buy the things that are sold at the store they work at. That the customer is also the worker, and the worker doesn't make enough to be a viable customer. That's where you are. That system can't work and doesn't work. And the people that are running it know it can't work and doesn't work out. So they decided to financialize things. What's that? We will now make magical tools of, whatever kind of financialized products we can make, asset-backed securities or whatever, you go on and on with them. And we'll make money doing that. We'll make money playing with money. Well, you know what? When I make money, because I get it over here, invest it over here, I want it to bring this amount back and then try to get the most I can. And then when I do that, it's not productive. Nobody's making widgets. Nobody's building anything, which means the money is just passing hands from me, the billionaire, into the market. And then the market is artificially inflated. And then I make more, but nobody out there builds a building or something so that the working class can get a piece of it. That model is not sustainable. It is if you're rich, but it creates great poverty and struggle, and ultimately it creates political economic instability, which breeds social instability, and it also breeds eventually political instability. And we are now in the political instability part: economic instability, social instability, political instability. Now, how that instability manifests itself, I think, at some point, will be violence. It will be, look, the Ukrainian conflict, that was supposed to take Russia out. It's going to fall apart. It's collapsing. And do the European ruling elite want to throw their own citizens in there to die on the altar of neoliberalism fighting Russia? Yes, but I don't think it's going to work because the people are angry and struggling. Not this year, maybe in the future, but not now. And what other options do they have? Right now, we're looking at governments that are on the verge of collapse, governments that technically, politically speaking, when you have government leader, the prime minister of your country is at 13%, your government has already collapsed. He does not represent the people. He never did. But now the people have figured out that he doesn't represent them. And how long can these countries, the UK, particularly, I think the UK is the first to go. France is in deep trouble, but I think the UK is the first domino to fall. But how long can the UK continue to pretend that it is some Western industrial economic power and the people in this country are living better than people in other? How long can they continue to pretend this? Because the people are feeling the pain. And how long before the pain of the people manifests itself at number 10 Downing Street through thousands, if not millions of people in the street? Because this thing's falling apart. And they're dominoes and they're pretending, just sitting there playing, pretending like nothing's going bad. La 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 la. They're um pretending as though, maybe another government will come in, or we've got to keep things going the way we want them going and everything will be fine and blah blah blah, and things are just, spiraling down. And what happens is this: you've heard the old adage about, someone says, how did I go broke? Slowly and then suddenly. They're hoping that it'll continue to be a slow descent, but I don't think, in the same way that the collapse of the Ukrainian lines and the Ukrainian military will have that nature. It will be slowly and then suddenly. The collapse of the Ukrainian lines will be, as it is, the Russians continue to chip away at them. They continue to lose town after town, burg after burg. But at some point, there will be a straw that broke the camel's back moment, and you're going to have this. It'll go from slowly to suddenly, and that's what awaits Europe economically. It's from slowly to suddenly. And what happens then? What do they tell the people? We've got to do this or that. Let me tell you one thing's obvious, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you believe it or not, it's up to you. The Americans ain't sending in the cavalry. That's not what they do. They are not. They're looking at the front door, brother. The Americans right now they were instrumental in starting this thing in Ukraine. They are looking at the front door. They're like, yes, well, there'll be lots of pressure for Trump. There ain't gonna be but so much pressure. This is what a lot of people say. There'll be great pressure for Trump to join in and to take military action. I don't think so. There'll be some, but you know what? The closer we get to the midterms, all those people want to do is keep their jobs. They want to keep their seats. You think, the midterms are coming up and Ukraine's falling apart, do you think that a bunch of politicians in America are going to say we should send our boys over here to die, knowing that they will, if anything like that happens, and if they try to push it, they'll lose? That Americans will be in the street. Oh, no, no, no. We don't want to go fight for no damn Ukraine. So I'm telling you, the politicians may talk a lot of crap, but if it comes down to it and Ukraine starts falling apart, they ain't going to press Trump. They're not going to be like, Trump, we've got to go over there and get militarily engaged with Russia. They're not going to do it. They may pretend to now. They may push. A few little neocons may do it just to show that they've got the neocon spirit. But there will not be a landslide of Trump. We got to go enter Ukraine and fight. And so we can give up. We'll trade Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York for Kiev in a nuclear confrontation. Nope, not happening. A lot of people think it will. I could be wrong. I don't believe it's going to happen. That ain't what the U.S. does, right? Someone says, whatever happened with Article 4 called by Poland recently? Well, what is Article 4? A consultation. It's always been Article 4, right? Hey, we got something going on. What should we do? We'll call Article 4. Great. What's Article 4? Consultation. So that's a meeting. Yeah, in a meeting room. Yeah, but we've been meeting in meeting rooms for the last 3 years. Yeah, well, but it wasn't Article 4. All right, then we're going to have an Article 4 meeting in a conference room. And what are we going to do there? The same thing we've done in all the other meetings. Well, then why are we calling it Article 4? Because we don't have any other article to call it. Okay, Article 4 it is. Move forward. They're moving with Article 4. And let me tell you, even Article 5. Article 5 only means that every country will do whatever they decide. Each individual country will do whatever they deem necessary. Let me tell you something. If Russia blew the hell out of Latvia, Lithuania, and whatever the hell the other Baltic state is, blew them flat tomorrow, the United States wouldn't do a damn thing. Blew them, flattened them. Poland too. Boom, blew Oreshniks all over, flattened everything there. If you think that the United States would come in, you poor suckers, and fight for you suckers. No, your job is to buy stuff from us. You're a money laundering operation. You are of value because of money laundering operations. You're not to be fought for. They're not fighting for you. No, Hey, what happened? The Russians dropped the Rushniks all over the Baltic states and flattened them all. The people are screwed. They're just it's a mess. U.S., what are you going to do? You're going to go in and fight? Article 4, maybe we could consult, have some meetings, something like that. Are you going to send in fighters? The fighters are busy. Okay, bombers. Right now we're short on bombers. We got to wash them and change the oil in our bombers. No, not happening. Sorry, suckers in Europe. If you think the U.S. is there to fight for you, they ain't. And they're not going to do it. And they're not coming in. And they're not, I don't care. There's not going to be so much pressure on Trump. When the rubber hits the road, they will exercise what? The Samsonite option. That's the option they always exercise. And that's the one they'll exercise. They will be happy to help the Europeans. Yeah, you want to go fight the Russians? Yeah, go for it, guys. So they hate the Europeans. More dead. Hey, Trump? Is there anything that we get good from his like assistance to slave Trump? Is there anything, what if the Europeans fight the Russians? What good can come of that? And Trump would be less Europeans. That's it. That's what they got Trump invents. You think they really care about the Europeans? We don't want them to get killed by the right. They hate them. They hate their leaders. They despise them. And they ain't nobody in our government sending a soul over to die for Europe. Not happening. Europe, you go die. We got bigger fish to fry. Europe, you go die. And here's the example. What are they doing? You think they fight for you? They are literally robbing you blind. They literally cut you off from energy that was cheap and that benefited you economically, drove you into poverty, and they're selling you that same energy at 5 to 7 times the cost. Think about that. And then ask yourself, are they your friends? If they would drive you into abject poverty, which is where you're going, belittle you every chance they get, look down their nose at you, sell you that same energy for 5 to 7 times the cost, do you really believe that if the Russians were coming across to fight you or winning, about to take Kyiv, that they would go in and sacrifice themselves for the suckers that they are abusing economically? Think about that for a second. They're using and abusing you economically and driving you into poverty. That should be what we would call in the investigators community a clue. A clue. They don't give a crap about you. You, Europe, to the United States ruling elite mean as much to them as you mean to your own ruling elite. Bupkis, zero. Sorry, I'm sorry to give you the tough love. But if you think the U.S. is on your side, you're suckers. They're taking you to the cleaners economically. They ain't fighting for you. They'll send you to your doom happily. Happily send you to your doom. But other than that, they ain't got nothing for you. And as times get harder in Europe, you know what they're going to do? They're going to drain you even more. When the Europe's like, oh my God, we're having trouble with food. And what you know what the U.S. is going to say? We ain't really got enough to spare. But you've got grain. Can we get some grain from you? We'd like to. We'll sell you some. What's it going for in the market? It's going for $100 a ton. Great. $500 a ton. We'll sell you some. The Russians will be like, the Europeans are like, yeah, but we're starving. Can you give us a price? Okay, $4.99. We'll give you a good price, $4.99. But everybody else is selling for $100. Yeah, but they can't sell you any. Really? You know why? Yeah, because you tariffed them all and you hated them all and you treated them mean, just like we told you to. And now you can only buy from us. And because you can only buy from us, we're going to sell them to you. You got to understand something. Here's the dynamic. The U.S. said, we want you to tariff those people, to sanction those people, and not buy cheap oil from those people. We want you to buy it from us. And because you're stupid enough to listen to us, you can only buy it from us. And because you can only buy it from us, we're going to sell it to you at 7 times the price. The U.S. ruling elite ain't on your side, Europe. And your own ruling elite ain't on your side, Europe. You're toast. You're done. Now, is there any possibility that Europe can come out of it? Not much. And I'll tell you why. Because they pissed the Russians off so bad. I mean, come on. Hey, you're not allowed to read Dostoevsky or watch the Bolshoi ballet. Not even on television. You're not allowed to play basketball against the Russians in a international game. You just play soccer against the Russians. Now the Israelis, sure, you can do it. Oh yeah, I'd love the Israelis, but not the Russians because they're evil. They're doing bad things. Israelis aren't doing bad things. Only the Russians. So you have demonstrated to the Russians that you despise them. See, here's the thing: the ruling elite wants to rob them, and they've convinced you to just hate them they're Russians, they're below you. And when you come back to the Russians and say, "We're sorry, can we get your fuel, your gas, your oil, your this, their wheat?" Russians say, "Screw you, sorry, we've already got other markets. It's nothing personal, it's business. We got other markets." And the U.S. is going to say, well, we've got something to sell you, a little teeny bit, but it's only going to be 7 to 10 times the price. Did we say 10 times? 20 times the price, because you can't buy it anywhere else. They're setting you up in the worst possible way. And you know what? If they can set you up and you're stupid enough to tariff China, they'll do it too. And we don't even make the things. You know what the U.S. will say? You need to sanction China and not buy anything from China. And the European ruling elite say, good idea, we'll sanction China. But we need to buy things from China. What are we going to do? The U.S. will say, no problem. Here's what we're going to do. We'll buy them from China and we'll resell them to you at 5 times the price. We'll just buy stuff from China and mark them up to you. And then we'll sell them to you and make a profit. And the Europeans will be like, but why don't we just buy them from China? They're cheaper. No, because China's evil. You have to sanction China. They're terrible. They're evil. They're bad people. They're communists, for God's sake. You wouldn't buy anything from them. Buy it from us. Now we'll buy it from them, then we'll mark it up and we'll sell it to you, you poor ignorant bastards. That's exactly what the United States position is. And sadly for the European people, if they don't wake up soon, and it may already be too late, they are condemned to a future of poverty. Now, I live in the United States. It wouldn't shock me if I'm sailing down the same river, the lazy river, as they say, that I'm drifting in an inner tube down the lazy river. Things ain't looking good for the future, for economic future. And people can't buy, the car industries are done. I mean, car lots right now, go to a car lot in the United States and tell me what you see packed. A lot of the new car lots are just really used car lots that got all the used cars that they can get in used cars, because who the hell is paying $50,000 and $60,000 for a freaking Honda Accord? You know what I mean? $40-some thousand for a Toyota Camry. Really? No, it's not happening. And they cannot possibly allow in the United States Chinese cars to be sold here, because they're cheap enough that people could afford them and everybody buy them. But I don't know what's going to happen when all the other cars, Ford, Chevy, all of them, they got to go out of business. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to come to the government for bailouts. We need a bailout. We need X amount of billions of dollars. And I guess the governments will bail them out until the dollar dies and they can't do it anymore. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying, if I were a European, if I were to give advice to the Europeans, I'd say you better rise up. That's your only chance. But I doubt if it's going to happen, because of the level of propaganda. Like here, everything all over the place is blue and yellow, the color of the Ukrainian flag. I don't know what they're going to do with all that blue and yellow paint when Ukraine dies, but they'll find something to do with it, whatever. But just continue to, those of you who are in the chat who are from Europe, continue to spread the good message, to advocate for the right thing, to try to do something to enlighten people. You can share this on all your social media platforms. You can share whatever. If you like it, if you don't, but try your best to wake up people, because there's a lot of people who are dead sleep. And you know what? That's when they get you. That's when they sneak up behind you when you're sleeping. They stick a shiv right between your rib cage. You're done. And we don't want that to happen. So we're trying to stop that. Let's see. Russia is ready. Somebody says breaking. Russia is ready to sell its latest military weapons to Iraq. Here's the thing about Iraq, though. Did you know this? Iraq sells oil. Do you know where the money goes to? New York banks. All of the money that Iraq makes for selling oil goes to the United States, and the United States then gives them back whatever. They've just basically, the United States government is looting Iraq. They give them a small percentage. But Iraq's oil money is all looted by the United States. Anyway, so Why? But if someone says you have no choice but to buy Russia's weapons, well, how's this? Who in the hell would buy this crap we have? It don't work. It doesn't work. I mean, you got Russian weapons that seem to work, and American European weapons that just don't seem to work so well. So it is what it is. All right, let me see, everyone. I don't see. Oops, sorry. Any super chats? No super. If they are, I would answer them, but I don't see any. I guess times are hard. People are struggling. They can't even afford super chats anymore. Nope. But thanks a lot, everybody. Bottom line is this, as I've said before, if you can afford it, patreon.com, PayPal, buy me a coffee, Cash App, whatever you can. Oh, there we go. Ozzy with the super chat. Thank you very much, Ozzy. Certainly appreciate that. There's my P.O. box. And if you can, whatever you want to send, some people send me cards. Some people write a letter and just send a letter. Some people do send donations. Some people send books. I've had people send clothing, all kinds of stuff. Thank you very much, everybody, for sending stuff to my P.O. box. Certainly appreciate that for the snail mailers out there. And even buy me a coffee, you can put on there, buy Garland a coffee. How much? $5. How many? Whatever many you want. And of course, you can make it monthly if you want, just like Patreon. So thanks, everybody. Also, follow me over on my Substack. I think it's only like $5 a month or something to be a Substack member. So you can join my Substack also. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. Oh, there we go. There's Josh Wright. Thanks very much, Josh Wright. Myra Page. All right. Myra says, whatever is live, otherwise Oasis. Oh, I must be, let me just say this before I go. The great thing about these online platforms is, and I think it's wonderful, that as I'm running off at the yap saying God only knows what, there are wise people actually having conversations in the chat. That if you look over there, there's like people who are like associating with friends, hanging out with their friends, having chats, meeting each other. I think that's great. I think this is excellent, that it gives people an opportunity to get together with like-minded individuals and to have some fun and to have, a little bit of freedom of association. Thank you very much. All right. Something for the tip jar. Thanks, everybody. It looks like things keep going this way. I may be able to go to Moscow with Scott Ritter in November after all. So thank you very much for everybody contributing. I'm out. Share this on all your social media platforms. Peace.